The garage smelled like oil and old regret, two scents Marcus Martinez had learned to live with. He sat hunched over the workbench at 3 in the morning, shoulders curved forward under the weight of fluorescent light, spreading medical records across scarred wood like a man laying out evidence of his own failure. The pages were yellow at the edges, some of them water-stained from the storage unit where he'd kept them for 16 years, unable to look but unable to throw away. Sarah's breathing came steady through the baby monitor he still kept plugged in, even though she was 16 now. Old habits, marine habits. You slept light when the people you loved were in danger, and his daughter had been in danger since the moment she was born. The record in front of him showed a birth time of 11:47 p.m. He'd been there. He remembered the clock on the wall, the harsh white of those delivery room lights, Maria's hand crushing his as she pushed. The baby's first cry that never came. The doctors moving fast, too fast, their voices tight with something that wasn't quite panic, but close enough to make his combat instincts flare. He pulled out his phone, found the photograph he'd taken of Maria's admission bracelet before they'd made him leave the room. The timestamp read 11:52 p.m., 5 minutes after Sarah was born, according to the official record. But he'd been wearing his watch, the same Seiko his drill instructor had worn in Desert Storm, passed down when the old man retired. That watch read 12:03 a.m. when they'd finally let him back in to see his daughter. 16 minutes missing from the official timeline. Marcus had spent 20 years as a Navy corpsman attached to Marine units before the Iron Skulls became his full-time family. He knew what 16 minutes meant in a medical emergency, knew how much could go wrong, knew how many lives he'd lost in less time than that on sand that was still probably stained with their blood. The next page showed the doctor's signature. Catherine Wells, chief of obstetrics. The ink was too dark compared to the rest of the document, the pressure inconsistent. He'd learned forgery detection from a master chief who'd spent 3 years investigating procurement fraud. This signature had been added later, photocopied maybe, or scanned and printed. Not original. His phone buzzed. Text from Cisco, the club's sergeant-at-arms. You sleeping? Marcus typed back, when do I ever 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally found another one. Nurse from that night. Living in Albuquerque now. Name's Patricia Owens. Remarried twice. Works at a Walgreens. That made 4. 4 people who'd been in that delivery room, all of them scattered to different states within 2 years of Maria's death. One of them, the anesthesiologist, had wrapped his car around a tree in Montana 18 months after. Blood alcohol 3 times the legal limit, according to the police report. But the man's wife swore he'd been sober for 6 years. Marcus saved the information, added it to the spreadsheet he'd been building. 43 names connected to St. Michael's Medical Center in Austin on the night of March 15, 2009. 17 of them no longer working in medicine. 6 dead. 9 moved out of state. The pattern was there if you knew how to look, and Marcus had learned to look at patterns during his second tour in Fallujah, tracking insurgent cells through their movements and gaps in their stories. The door from the house creaked open. Sarah stood silhouetted against the kitchen light, wearing one of his old Marine Corps t-shirts that hung to her knees. She wasn't supposed to be awake. He checked on her at midnight, watched her chest rise and fall in the darkness of her room, surrounded by the glow-in-the-dark stars they'd stuck to her ceiling when she was 8. She moved into the garage with the careful steps of someone who'd spent her whole life navigating a world that didn't announce itself. Her eyes found him, then dropped to the papers on his workbench. Her face so much like Maria's it still hurt to look at, sometimes tightened with recognition. You're doing it again. Her voice carried that particular flatness that came from not being able to hear herself speak, each word carefully shaped from years of speech therapy and stubborn practice. Marcus straightened, felt his spine protest. 63 years old, and he still moved like he was hauling a combat pack through hostile territory. Couldn't sleep. Liar. Sarah crossed to the workbench, her fingers trailing over the documents. She'd learned to read upside down when she was 12, a skill born from sitting across from doctors while they discussed her case like she wasn't there. Her eyes scanned the pages, that sharp intelligence she'd inherited from her mother, parsing information faster than most people could process. You found something. It wasn't a question. Sarah had always been able to read him better than anyone, even Maria, especially after Maria died. They'd learned each other's faces the way other people learn languages, every micro-expression a word, every shift in posture, a complete sentence. He pulled out the admission bracelet photo, showed her the timestamp, then the birth certificate with its doctored signature. Her jaw tightened, that muscle jumping just below her ear, the way it did when she was angry. She'd been getting angry more often lately, that 16-year-old fury at a world that had dealt her a bad hand and refused to explain why. What does it mean? Her hands moved as she spoke, signing the words simultaneously. She did that when she was stressed, doubling down on communication like she could force the universe to listen if she said things twice. Marcus considered lying, considered telling her it was nothing, just discrepancies in old paperwork, nothing to worry about. But Sarah deserved better than lies. She'd lived in enough silence already. It means someone changed the records. After the fact. To hide something that happened during your birth. Sarah's hands stilled. She stared at the documents, her breathing shallow. When she looked back up at him, her eyes were wet, but her voice stayed level. Something they did to Mom. Or to you. Or both. Marcus reached across the workbench, covered her hand with his. His palm was scarred and calloused, hers smooth except for the ink stains from the graphic novels she drew in her spare time. I'm going to find out what, I promise you that. You've been promising that for 16 years, Dad. No accusation in her tone. Just fact. Just the weight of time they'd both carried. Maybe it's time to stop looking. Maybe there's nothing to find. There's always something to find. You just have to know where to look. Marcus pulled up the spreadsheet on his phone, showed her the names. 4 people from that night, all of them ran. That's not coincidence. That's guilt. Sarah studied the list, her artist's eye catching details he might have missed. She zoomed in on one name, Patricia Owens, the nurse in Albuquerque. She got married 3 months after Mom died, to someone with a different last name, then divorced and married again within a year. People get divorced. Not that fast, not unless they're running from something or hiding from something. Sarah's fingers moved across the screen, pulling up social media profiles with the ease of someone who'd grown up digital. Look at this. She doesn't have any photos posted from Texas. Nothing. Her whole online life starts in New Mexico, like she erased everything before. Marcus looked at his daughter, this girl who'd learned to investigate the world because she couldn't hear it, and felt pride mixed with the familiar ache of guilt. She shouldn't have to be this sharp, shouldn't have to be this suspicious. She should have been a normal teenager, worried about colleges and boys and whether her art portfolio was good enough. Instead, she was helping him hunt for answers to questions that kept them both awake at night. His phone buzzed again. Cisco calling this time. Marcus answered, put it on speaker so Sarah could read his lips. Cisco's voice came through, rough like gravel in a blender. Prez, we got a problem. Someone's been asking questions about you at County General, specifically about why you're pulling old records. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Who time, lawyer type, wouldn't give a name. But the records clerk said she had St. Michael's Hospital letterhead on her business card. Sarah's eyes snapped to Marcus' face. St. Michael's had closed 5 years ago, folded into a larger hospital group after a series of malpractice suits. There shouldn't be anyone using that letterhead anymore. She say what she wanted. Just asked if Marcus Martinez had been making inquiries. When the clerk said she couldn't confirm or deny, the woman left a card. Said to call if anyone remembered anything about a birth in March 2009. Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. 16 years of digging through records, making quiet inquiries, following leads that went nowhere, and now suddenly someone was interested in his interest. That meant he was close to something. Meant someone was worried about what he might find. You still have that card. Took a photo, sending it now. The image appeared on Marcus's screen. Simple business card, white with black text. Catherine Wells, medical consultant. A phone number with an Austin area code. No company name. No law firm. Just a name and a number. Sarah saw it too. Her face went pale. That's the doctor. The one who signed my birth certificate. The one whose signature was forged. Marcus stared at the card, his mind working through possibilities. If Dr. Wells was reaching out, if she was making herself known, that meant one of two things. Either she wanted to silence him before he found something, or she wanted to talk. Marines learn to trust their instincts in combat. The gut feeling that said, don't turn that corner, don't open that door, don't trust that local who's smiling too wide. Marcus' instincts were screaming now, but he couldn't tell if they were screaming danger or opportunity. You're going to call her. Sarah said it, flat statement, not question. I'm going to call her, and you're taking me with you when you meet. Marcus opened his mouth to argue, to tell her it was too dangerous, that he'd kept her safe for 16 years and wasn't about to stop now. But Sarah's face held that stubborn set he recognized from every mirror. She was Maria's daughter, all right. Maria, who'd argued her way into letting him propose in a hospital chapel between his deployments. Maria, who'd refused to leave Texas even when the pregnancy got complicated, who'd insisted on having their baby at St. Michael's because it was the closest to their apartment. Maria, who died because of choices Marcus had let other people make. If I say no, you'll find a way to come anyway. Probably. Sarah's lips quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. I'm 16, rebellious teenage phase. Very dangerous. You're the most dangerous thing in my life, and you know it. Good. Sarah picked up the business card photo, studied it like she was memorizing every pixel. So we call her tomorrow. Tonight. People who want to talk at 3 a.m. are either desperate or scared. Either way, they're honest. Marcus dialed the number before he could second-guess himself. The line rang once, twice. On the third ring, a woman's voice answered rough, like she'd been crying or smoking or both. You got my card. Marcus put the phone on speaker, watched Sarah lean in to read the woman's lips, even though she couldn't see her face. Dr. Wells, I presume. Not doctor anymore. Haven't practiced in 5 years. A wet cough, something rattling in her lungs. I was expecting you to call Mr. Martinez. I've been watching you watch me for 3 months now. So she knew. Knew he'd been investigating. Knew he'd found the irregularities in the records. The question was why she was reaching out now, why she was making herself available after years of silence. Then you know what I want. You want to know why your wife died and your daughter was born deaf. Another cough, longer this time. When Wells spoke again, her voice was thinner, winded. You want to know what really happened in that delivery room. What we did, what we covered up. Sarah's hand found Marcus' arm, gripped hard enough to hurt. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the phone, like she could force the woman to appear if she stared hard enough. You going to tell me? I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to show you. A pause, the sound of papers rustling. St. Michael's closed down, but I still have keys to the old building. They haven't demolished it yet, just locked it up. Every record from that night is still in the archives. The real records, not the sanitized versions you've been finding. Marcus felt something cold slide down his spine. This was wrong, too easy, too convenient. Nobody just handed over evidence of their own crimes after 16 years of covering them up. Why now? Why not 5 years ago when you stopped practicing? Why not 16 years ago when you could have saved me the trouble? Because I was a coward. Wells' voice cracked. Because I valued my reputation over the truth. Because I told myself it was an accident, that mistakes happen, that we'd done everything we could. And I've been telling myself that lie for 16 years while you've been searching for answers I could have given you at any time. That's not an answer, that's confession theater. You want absolution, find a priest. I'm dying, Mr. Martinez. Flat statement. No plea for sympathy. Stage 4 lung cancer. Maybe 3 months left. I don't want absolution. I want to try to fix what I broke before I don't have hands to fix it with anymore. Sarah made a small sound, something between a whoop and a sob. Her fingers dug into Marcus' arm hard enough to leave marks. In the fluorescent light of the garage, she looked younger than 16. Looked like the 8-year-old who'd asked him why God made her different, why she couldn't hear music like other kids, why she had to hurt all the time. He'd told her then that some questions didn't have answers, that sometimes you just had to be strong and keep moving. But he'd been lying. Everything had answers. You just had to be willing to dig deep enough and survive what you found. The old St. Michael's building. Tomorrow night. Tonight, I'll be dead tomorrow. Wells coughed again, that wet rattle getting worse. 2 a.m., loading dock entrance in the back. I'll have the records ready. Everything you want to know. Everything I should have told you 16 years ago. The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone, that combat instinct screaming at him. This was an ambush. Had to be. Nobody confessed this cleanly. Nobody offered up everything without conditions or leverage or some angle that benefited them. But Sarah was looking at him with those eyes that were too old for 16 and he could see she was already planning to go with or without him. Better to walk into an ambush you saw coming than let your kid walk into one blind. We tell Cisco, bring backup. No, was Sarah's voice sharp. If she sees a bunch of bikers, she'll run. This has to be just us. That's how people die, Sarah. Going into situations just us. Then we die learning the truth. She stood, collected the medical records from the workbench, started organizing them back into their folders with the neat precision she brought to everything. I've spent 16 years not knowing why I'm like this. Why mom died. Why you've been tearing yourself apart at trying to find answers. If there's even a chance this woman is telling the truth, we have to take it. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that safety mattered more than truth, that he'd already lost Maria and couldn't lose her too. But the words died in his throat because they both knew he was going to do exactly what she wanted. Because Sarah was right. They were both tired of not knowing. The hours between 3 a.m. and midnight moved like years. Marcus tried to sleep, managed maybe 90 minutes before the nightmares pulled him back up. Dreams of delivery rooms that turned into combat zones, of Maria bleeding out, while doctors stood frozen, of Sarah screaming in a voice he'd never actually heard, because by the time she was old enough to scream, she couldn't hear what screaming sounded like. He gave up on rest, went for a ride instead. Let the motorcycle eat up empty highway miles while the sun came up, painting Austin in shades of orange and gold that made the city look cleaner than it was. Past the spot where St. Michael's used to be, that 5-story brick building, now dark and empty, windows boarded up, parking lot grown over with weeds. It looked like every abandoned hospital he had ever seen. Forgotten, left to rot, the kind of place where secrets went to die. His phone rang. Cisco. You're making a mistake, Prez. Probably. Marcus downshifted, took the exit that would loop him back toward home. Wouldn't be my first. Sarah told me where you're going tonight, what you're doing. Marcus felt irritation flare. Sarah knew better than to involve other people in what amounted to a family matter. Except the club was family too, had been since he'd patched in 15 years ago. Iron Skulls took care of their own, and that meant not letting the president walk into obvious danger alone. She shouldn't have done that. She did it because she's smarter than you. Cisco's voice held no judgment, just fact. She knows you'll do something stupid to protect her. Knows you need someone to protect you from yourself. I've been taking care of myself since before you were born, Cisco. And you've got the scars to prove it. But this is different. This is someone who knows you're coming. Someone who's had 16 years to prepare for this conversation. You really think she's just going to hand over evidence that incriminates herself? Marcus had thought about nothing else all morning. Run through every scenario, every angle, every way this could go wrong. They all ended badly, but they also all ended with answers, and that was worth the risk. She's dying. People make different choices when they're dying. People also get desperate when they're ding. Maybe she wants to take you down with her. Maybe there's someone else involved who doesn't want the truth coming out. You thought about that? I've thought about everything. Doesn't change what I'm doing. A long pause. Marcus could hear voices in the background, the familiar sounds of the clubhouse starting to wake up. Someone laughing, the clink of bottles being cleared from last night. Life happening normally while his was about to pivot on whatever Dr. Catherine Wells had waiting for him. Then I'm coming with you. Club vote. Unanimous. No vote needed. This is personal. Everything's personal with you, Marcus. That's why you need backup. Cisco's voice softened slightly. Brother, I know what this means to you. Know what Sarah means. But if you walk into this alone and something happens, that girl loses the only parent she has left. You want her to spend the rest of her life wondering if you'd still be alive if you just asked for help. The words hit harder than they should have. Marcus pulled over to the shoulder, killed the engine, sat there watching morning traffic flow past while his phone waited for an answer. Cisco was right. He hated that Cisco was right. Hated that his own daughter had gone behind his back because she knew he'd do exactly this. Charge forward. Take the hit himself. Keep everyone else safe even if it destroyed him. Maria used to joke that he had a hero complex, that his combat training had permanently broken his sense of self-preservation. She'd laughed when she said it, but there was truth underneath. He'd volunteered for every dangerous deployment, taken every risky assignment. Put himself between bullets and brothers so many times it became reflex. And when Maria died, when Sarah was born deaf and in pain, he'd taken that failure personally too. Made it his mission to fix, to save, to carry alone. Just you, nobody else, and you stay in the truck unless I signal. Deal. Cisco sounded relieved. Picking you up at 1:30. Wear dark clothes. The line went dead before Marcus could change his mind. He rode home slowly, taking surface streets instead of the highway. Past the elementary school Sarah had attended, where teachers had learned sign language to accommodate her. Past the park where he'd pushed her on swings for hours, watching her laugh in complete silence. Past the diner where they still ate breakfast most Saturdays, where waitresses knew to approach from the front so Sarah could see them coming. 16 years of routine. 16 years of building a life around her limitations. 16 years of wondering if it could have been different. Tonight he'd find out. Sarah was awake when he got home, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. She'd pulled her hair back, dressed in black, like she was going to a funeral. Maybe she was. Maybe they both were. Cisco told you he called. He told me. Marcus grabbed coffee, drank it black and scalding. He's coming. Non-negotiable. Good. Sarah closed the laptop, pushed it aside. I looked up Dr. Wells. She really is dying. Hospice care. No family listed. No next of kin. She could still be dangerous. So could we. Sarah met his eyes. She took Mom from us. Took 16 years of my life. If this is a trap, I want to be there. I want her to see what she did. Marcus wanted to tell her that revenge didn't heal anything. That confronting the person who hurt you rarely brought the closure people imagined. He'd learned that in Iraq, watching families of civilian casualties confront the soldiers who'd killed their loved ones by accident or orders. Nobody walked away feeling better, but Sarah wasn't looking for closure. She was looking for truth. And truth was different. Truth was solid. Truth was something you could build on, even if it hurt. You stay behind me. Cisco stays outside. At the first sign of trouble, you run. No arguments, no heroics. Same rules for you. I'm serious, Sarah. So am I. She stood cross to him, put her hand on his chest over his heart. You've been my hero my whole life, but you're not invincible. I need you to remember that tonight. Marcus covered her hand with his. I remember it every time I look at you. They spent the afternoon in careful preparation. Marcus cleaned his .45, checked the spare magazine, made sure everything functioned smoothly. He didn't plan to need it, didn't plan to fire it. But plans fell apart in contact with reality, and he'd buried too many people who'd gone into situations unprepared. Sarah packed a bag, medical supplies, flashlights, bottled water, a small first aid kit she'd assembled herself over years of watching him deal with club business that occasionally ended in blood. She moved efficiently, checking and double-checking everything, her artist's attention to detail, making sure nothing was missed. At 1 o'clock, she looked up from her preparations. I wrote Mom a letter, in case something happens tonight. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Nothing's going to happen. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. Sarah pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, held it out. If something does, I want her to know I wasn't angry. That I understood you were trying. That I'm grateful I got 16 years with you, even if they were harder than they should have been. He took the letter, tucked it into his jacket without reading it. If he read it, he'd lose his nerve. Would tell Cisco to stand down, would cancel the meet, would go back to the slow investigation that took years but kept everyone safe. Your mom would be proud of you, proud of who you became. She'd be terrified. She'd tell us both we're crazy for doing this. Probably, but she'd understand. Cisco's truck rumbled up at exactly 1:30. Marcus and Sarah climbed in, nobody speaking. The drive to St. Michael's took 15 minutes through empty streets. Austin after midnight was a different city. Quieter, darker. The kind of place where secrets felt possible. The old hospital loomed against the night sky. 5 stories of dark brick and boarded windows, the parking lot chain-link fence torn down in places where scrappers had gotten in to steal copper wiring. The loading dock entrance sat at the back, a single overhead door marked with faded red paint that might have once been warnings about authorized personnel. Cisco parked 3 blocks away, killed the lights. I'll be watching. Anything goes wrong, I'm coming in. Give us 30 minutes. If we're not out by then, call the club. Call the police, Sarah said. This is bigger than club business. Marcus looked at his daughter. She was right again. Whatever they found tonight wasn't something the Iron Skulls could handle internally. This was hospitals and doctors and cover-ups that had lasted 16 years. This needed official investigations, legal consequences. Both, he said finally. Club first for backup, police for everything else. They climbed out of the truck. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of concrete and old rain and something else underneath. Decay, maybe, or just the particular smell of abandoned buildings slowly returning to earth. Marcus led the way to the loading dock. The door was propped open, just like Wells had promised. Inside, a single flashlight beam cut through darkness, held by a woman who looked like she'd already started dying. Dr. Catherine Wells was 68 but looked 85. Thin in the way cancer made people thin skin hanging loose over bones that seemed too sharp. Her hair had gone pure white, cut short like she'd stopped caring about vanity. She wore a cardigan despite the warm night, wrapped tight around herself like armor. When she saw Marcus, something crossed her face. Recognition, guilt, fear. All three mixing into an expression he'd seen before in the eyes of enemy combatants who knew they were caught. Mr. Martinez, her voice was even rougher in person. Thank you for coming. Marcus said nothing. Let his silence be its own response. Wells' eyes shifted to Sarah, widened. You brought her. She has a right to know what you did. Yes, Wells nodded slowly. She does. You both do. She gestured deeper into the building. The records are in my old office. 3rd floor. I couldn't carry them down with... She trailed off, indicated her body with a helpless gesture. Marcus felt every instinct scream. 3rd floor meant cornered, meant limited exits, meant tactical disadvantage. But they'd come this far. Backing out now meant 16 more years of wondering. After you. Wells led them inside. The loading dock opened into what had been a storage area, now empty, except for abandoned gurneys and medical equipment, too old or broken to salvage. Their flashlight beams cut through darkness that seemed heavier than it should be, thick with dust and the ghosts of 16 years' worth of medical emergencies. The stairwell was worse. Narrow concrete steps walls covered in graffiti left by urban explorers and homeless people who'd squatted here before the building got condemned. Marcus went first, Sarah behind him, Wells bringing up the rear. His hand stayed near the .45 under his jacket. Not touching it, just ready. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. Wells stopped at a door marked Administration, pulled out a key that looked older than the building itself. The lock clicked open. She pushed through into darkness, flipped a switch that did nothing. Power's been cut for years, but I have lanterns. She moved into the room, her flashlight beam finding several battery-powered lanterns set up on what had been her desk. She lit them one by one, and pale LED light spread across an office that looked frozen in time. Diplomas still on the walls, photos of smiling medical staff, a potted plant dead in its pot dried to brown sticks, and on the desk 3 boxes full of file folders. Everything from the night your wife died, everything we covered up, everything you wanted to know. Wells sank into her office chair like the climb had drained whatever energy she had left. I'm going to tell you what happened, and then I'm going to offer you something. A choice, the only thing I have left to give. Marcus moved to the desk, started pulling out files. Sarah joined him, both of them scanning pages by lantern light. What they found made Marcus's hands start to shake. Not just medical records, research protocols, consent forms that Maria had never signed, drug trial documentation for a medication called Nexpraxin designed to prevent postpartum hemorrhaging. Except the trial wasn't FDA approved, wasn't sanctioned by any medical board, was pure experimental research funded by a pharmaceutical company called Helios Medical Solutions. Sarah found the page that explained everything. Her hands trembled as she held it up to the light. Subject 23, Maria Martinez, 32 weeks pregnant, no complications. Administered 40 milligrams Nexpraxin at onset of labor per protocol. Severe adverse reaction at delivery. Subject expired 11:58 p.m. Infant survived but presenting with auditory nerve damage and foreign body complication. Foreign body complication. Marcus looked up at Wells. What does that mean, foreign body? Wells' face was gray in the lantern light. The drug caused a reaction. Your wife started hemorrhaging. We tried to stop. It tried everything, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. She was conscious at first, screaming. Sarah was already born crying perfect. But Maria knew she was dying. She begged us to save the baby at any cost. What did you do? There's a procedure, emergency treatment for infants exposed to ototoxic drugs. You implant a device, a small medical pump directly into the ear canal. It delivers protective medication to the auditory nerve. We were supposed to remove it after 72 hours. Sarah made a sound like she'd been punched. Marcus caught her as she swayed, held her upright with one arm while rage turned everything red at the edges of his vision. You left it in her for 16 years. We forgot, Wells' voice broke. In the chaos of your wife dying, of covering up the trial, of falsifying records, we forgot there was a device in your daughter's ear. And by the time I remembered 6 months later, it was too late. The device had failed, become infected. The tissue had grown around it. Trying to remove it would have destroyed her inner ear completely. So you let her suffer, let her live in pain and silence because removing your mistake would have exposed what you'd done. Yes, simple admission, no excuses. Yes, I did that, and I've thought about it every day for 16 years. Thought about your daughter growing up deaf because I was a coward, because I chose my career over her life. Marcus's hand moved to his gun. Sarah's hand stopped him, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. When he looked at her, tears were streaming down her face, but her expression was steel. Don't. We need her. Need her for what? Wells coughed, that wet rattle getting worse. When she pulled her hand away from her mouth, there was blood on her palm. Because I'm the only person alive who knows how to remove the device safely. Because the procedure is delicate enough that one mistake means your daughter loses all hearing permanently. Because I put it in, and I'm the only one who can take it out. The words hung in the dusty air of that abandoned office. Marcus felt the weight of them, felt the impossible choice crystallizing. This woman had killed his wife, had destroyed his daughter's hearing, had covered it up for 16 years, had chosen her reputation over their lives. And now she was offering to try to fix it. Sarah pulled away from him, crossed to Wells's desk, looked down at the woman who'd shaped her entire existence through negligence and cowardice. You're dying anyway. Why do this now? Why tell us? Why offer to fix it when you're going to be dead in 3 months? Wells met Sarah's eyes. Because I don't want to die knowing I could have tried and didn't. Because your father deserves the truth. Because you deserve a chance at the life you should have had. Another bloody cough. And because the pharmaceutical company that funded this trial is about to get FDA approval for Nexpraxin, about to put it on the market nationwide, about to do to thousands of women what they did to your mother, unless someone stops them, unless someone opposes what happened. Marcus felt the pieces sliding into place. This wasn't just about Sarah, wasn't just about Maria. This was bigger. This was a corporation that had killed people for profit and was about to do it again on a massive scale. You have proof, real proof, not just these files. I have everything. Patient outcomes, death rates, the real trial data showing Nexpraxin causes fatal hemorrhaging in 20% of subjects. All the data Helios Medical buried to push through approval. Wells pulled a USB drive from her pocket, held it out. This is everything. Every death, every cover-up, every dollar they spent to silence people like me. You release this, you destroy them. But you also expose what happened to your wife, expose what I did to Sarah. Everything becomes public. Sarah took the USB drive, turned it over in her fingers like it was something alive. How long do you have, really? 6 weeks, maybe 8 if I'm unlucky. Wells slumped in her chair. The device in your ear. I can remove it. I can try. But I need time to prepare, need to set up a surgical space, need to rest between now and then because that climb nearly killed me. And if you die before you can do the surgery, then the only other person who could remove it safely works for Helios Medical. And she's not going to risk exposing what they did by helping you. Marcus pulled out his phone. No signal in the dead building. He'd have to go outside to call Cisco. Had to figure out what to do with these files. With this choice Wells was offering, save his daughter at the risk of trusting the woman who'd destroyed her. or walk away and live with knowing they'd been this close to answers. Sarah made the decision for him. We take the files, we take the drive, and you're going to do the surgery. You're going to fix what you broke. And then Dad decides what happens to you after. Wells looked at Marcus. You're going to kill me. After. Even if the surgery works. I haven't decided yet. Marcus started gathering files, stuffing them back into boxes. But you better hope that surgery goes perfect. Because if you hurt her again, dying of cancer will look peaceful compared to what I do to you. They carried the boxes down 3 flights of stairs, Sarah and Marcus hauling, while Wells followed slowly each step, looking like it cost her something vital. By the time they reached the loading dock, Cisco was there, having heard the commotion and come running. He took one look at the boxes, at Wells' blood-stained hand, at Sarah's tear-streaked face, and started loading the truck without questions. That was brotherhood, knowing when to ask and when to just act. They drove Wells to a motel outside the city, got her a room. Marcus stayed outside while Sarah helped her inside, getting her settled. When Sarah came back out, she looked exhausted. Looked like she'd aged years in a few hours. She wants to do the surgery in 3 days, says she needs time to rest and get equipment. We're not trusting her. We don't have a choice. Sarah climbed into the truck, leaned against Marcus' shoulder. You read those files, 20% fatality rate. Mom was just one of 23 women they killed. And if we don't stop them, if we don't release that data, they're going to kill more. Marcus put his arm around his daughter, felt her shake with exhaustion and emotion, and the weight of knowing exactly why her life had been hard. The comfort of mystery was gone. Now there was just cause and effect, crime and consequence. A pharmaceutical company that had murdered for profit, and a doctor who'd been too coward to stop them. But there was also possibility. The first real possibility in 16 years that Sarah might hear, might live without pain, might get back something that had been stolen from her Ormo. Cisco drove them home as dawn started breaking. Nobody spoke. There was too much to say and no words big enough to hold it. When they pulled up to the house, Sarah looked at Marcus. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens with the surgery, we release that data. We stop Helios Medical. We make sure Mom didn't die for nothing. Marcus looked at his daughter, this girl who'd learned to be strong because the world gave her no choice. Who'd learned to fight because silence had been her only alternative. Who'd just met the woman who'd destroyed her life and chosen justice over revenge. I promise, no matter what happens, we finish this. They went inside. Sarah disappeared into her room. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with the USB drive, turning it over and over in his hands. Inside this small piece of plastic was enough evidence to destroy a corporation. Enough truth to honor Maria's death. Enough justice to maybe make 16 years of pain mean something. But first they had to trust a dying woman to cut into his daughter's skull. Had to bet Sarah's future on the trembling hands of someone who'd already failed her once. Had to choose between safety and possibility. Corpsmen were trained to assess risk, to calculate odds, to make hard choices in impossible situations. Marcus had made those choices in combat, had sent men into danger, had sacrificed pieces to save the whole. This was different. This was his daughter. This was everything that mattered. He pulled out his phone, called Cisco. I need you to find someone who can verify medical procedures, someone who can tell me if what Wells is proposing is even possible, and I need you to do it quietly. Helios Medical can't know we're coming for them. Already on it, Prez. Got a contact, former Army surgeon, works in private practice now. Owes me a favor. I'll have answers by tonight. And Cisco set up an emergency backup plan. If something goes wrong during this surgery, if Wells tries anything, I need extraction. Need medical support. Need everything ready to go. The whole club's ready. Just say the word. Marcus ended the call, looked at the closed door of Sarah's room, thought about 16 years of watching her hurt and not being able to fix it. 16 years of doctors saying nothing could be done. 16 years of living with the question of why. Now he had the why. Now he had the who. Now he had a chance, slim and dangerous, and possibly fatal, to make things right. The sun was fully up when Sarah emerged from her room. She'd showered, changed clothes, pulled herself together with the resilience he'd watched her build year by year. She sat across from him at the table, looked at the USB drive between them. What do we do first? We verify everything. Make sure Wells isn't lying about the device. Make sure the surgery is possible. Make sure we're not walking into another trap. Marcus met her eyes, and then we decide, together. No matter what I want to do, what I think is safe, this is your body, your choice, your life. I want to do it. No hesitation. I want to hear. Want to know what music sounds like. Want to hear your voice. Want to live without pain. She reached across the table, covered his hand. But more than that, I want those files released. Want Helios Medical destroyed. Want Mom's death to mean something. If the surgery fails, if I lose all hearing, that's the price. I'll pay it. Marcus wanted to tell her she was too young to make that choice, that she didn't understand the permanence of it, that he could protect her from having to risk anything. But Sarah wasn't young anymore. Hadn't been young since the first time she'd asked why she was different, and he'd had no answer to give her. She'd grown up in silence and pain and mystery, and that had made her stronger than most adults he knew. Okay, the word hurt coming out. We do this, we trust Wells, we do the surgery, and then we burn Helios Medical to the ground. Sarah smiled, that fierce expression that was all Maria. Good, because I already started loading the files to a secure server. If anything happens to us, if Helios comes after us, everything goes public. Automatically. They can't stop it anymore. When did you do that? While you were helping Wells into the motel. I'm not just your daughter, Dad. I'm Mom's daughter, too, and she didn't raise someone who waits for permission to do the right thing. Marcus laughed, the sound surprising him. No, she didn't. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Marcus contacted his Army surgeon friend, sent over the medical files, got confirmation that what Wells described was theoretically possible but incredibly dangerous. Got a list of equipment they'd need, supplies to have on hand, backup plans for every possible complication. Sarah worked on the data, organizing it, creating timelines, linking deaths to the trial, building a case that even Helios Medical's lawyers couldn't dispute. She worked with the focus of someone who'd found purpose, who discovered that her pain could become someone else's protection. By evening, they had a plan. By midnight, they had a surgical suite set up in the warehouse the Iron Skulls used for club business. By dawn, Wells was there, shaking but determined, looking at the equipment like it was both salvation and judgment. 3 days, she said. 3 days to rest and prepare. And then we do this. And Mr. Martinez, I want you to know, whatever happens, I'm grateful you're giving me this chance. Grateful I get to try to fix what I broke before I die. Marcus looked at the woman who had killed his wife, who'd destroyed his daughter's hearing, who'd chosen cowardice over courage for 16 years, and he felt no gratitude, no forgiveness, just cold determination. You don't get gratitude. You don't get forgiveness. You get one chance to do this right. And if you fail, if you hurt her, I will make sure your last days are spent in agony. That's not a threat. That's a promise, Wells nodded. I understand, and I accept those terms. Sarah stepped between them. 3 days. We prepare, we rest, and then we change everything. For Mom, for the 22 other women who died, for every woman who would have died if we didn't stop this. Marcus looked at his daughter, this girl who'd become a warrior without ever holding a weapon, who'd turned her pain into purpose, who'd learned to fight by first learning to survive. 3 days, he agreed, and then we finish what they started 16 years ago. One way or another, this ends. The warehouse smelled like disinfectant and motor oil, 2 scents that shouldn't mix, but did in the space the Iron Skulls had claimed as surgical theater. Marcus stood in the doorway watching Wells and her borrowed nurse, a woman named Patricia Owens, who'd flown in from Albuquerque with eyes that never stopped apologizing, arrange instruments on steel tables. 3 days had passed since that meeting in the abandoned hospital. 3 days of Wells getting weaker, of Sarah getting quieter, of Marcus running through every scenario where this went wrong. Cisco approached from behind, boots heavy on concrete. His voice dropped low enough that only Marcus could hear. Still time to call this off. Take Sarah to Mayo Clinic. Let real surgeons handle it. Marcus didn't turn around. Real surgeons will ask questions. Questions lead to investigations. Investigations lead to Helios Medical finding out we have their data before we're ready to release it. So we release it now, tonight. Burn them before they know we're coming. And Sarah stays deaf, stays in pain, lives the rest of her life knowing we had a chance to fix it and chose revenge instead. Marcus finally looked at Cisco. Would you make that choice if it was your kid? Cisco's jaw worked. He had 3 daughters, all under 10. Marcus watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. Watched him run through the same impossible math Marcus had been running for 3 days straight. No, I wouldn't. Cisco pulled out his phone, showed Marcus a screen. But I'd have this ready. One button. Sends everything to the FBI, CDC, every major news outlet. Something goes wrong in there. Something happens to Sarah. I push it. Helios Medical burns before Wells's body goes cold. Marcus took the phone, studied the draft email with its 247 attachments. 16 years of evidence compiled into one weapon. He handed it back. Don't push it until I tell you. We expose Helios wrong and they'll bury it in lawsuits and settlements. We need this clean. Need it ironclad. Need Sarah's testimony that the device in her ear came from their trial. She can't testify if she's dead. The words hit like a gut punch because they were true. Because Marcus was betting his daughter's life on a woman whose hands shook from cancer and guilt. Because he'd spent 20 years keeping people alive in combat zones, and now he was voluntarily putting Sarah on an operating table in a warehouse. Sarah appeared in the doorway behind them, dressed in the hospital gown Wells had requested. Her feet were bare against concrete, hair pulled back, face scrubbed clean. She looked impossibly young and impossibly old at the same time. It's time, her voice steady. Not a question. Statement of fact. Wells crossed from the surgical area, moving slowly. 3 days of rest had helped, but she still looked like death walking. Her eyes found Sarah's face and something crumbled in her expression. You look like your mother. I didn't see it before, but I see it now. Same eyes, same determination. Wells' voice cracked. Maria fought so hard to stay alive. Fought right up until her heart stopped. She made me promise to save you. Made me swear. And I did save you that night. I just didn't finish the job. Sarah's hands moved, signing as she spoke. You killed her. You destroyed my hearing. You took 16 years from both of us because you were too coward to admit what you'd done. No anger in her tone, just fact. But you're here now, you're trying. So let's finish what you started. Let's actually save me this time. Marcus watched Wells absorb the words, watched her nod once sharp and final. Then she turned to him. 6 hours minimum, possibly longer. The device has been in place for 16 years. Tissue has grown around it. Scar tissue, infection. The ear canal has essentially healed around a foreign object that was never meant to stay in place. Wells pulled out a tablet, showed him scans they'd taken 2 days ago at a clinic Cisco knew. See here, the device is pressed against the tympanic membrane and potentially the ossicles. One wrong move, and Sarah loses structural integrity in the middle ear. Best case, permanent conductive hearing loss. Worst case, damage cascades to inner ear structures. Then don't make a wrong move. Mr. Martinez, I need you to understand the risks. There's a 30% chance of total hearing loss. 15% chance of facial paralysis if I damage the facial nerve that runs through the middle ear. 5% chance of meningitis if bacteria from the device spreads during extraction. And given my condition, given how much my hands shake, those percentages go up. Sarah stepped forward. What's the chance I hear if we do nothing? 0. What's the chance the pain stops if we do nothing? Wells hesitated. It will get worse. The device is failing. The infection is spreading. Within a year, maybe 2, you'll need emergency surgery anyway. But by then, the damage will be catastrophic. So we do it now. Sarah looked at Marcus. With someone who knows what they're doing, with someone who put it in and knows how to take it out. We do it now while we still have a choice. Marcus wanted to grab her, wanted to pull her out of this warehouse and drive until they hit ocean, wanted to keep her safe the way he'd failed to keep Maria safe. But Sarah's face held that expression he'd learned not to argue with. That Martinez stubbornness that came from both sides of her family. Okay, the word tasted like surrender. But I'm in there. I watch every move. And if anything goes wrong, if I see you hesitate or shake or make a mistake, I stop this. No arguments. Wells nodded. I wouldn't expect anything less. She turned to Patricia Owens. Get her prepped. Local anesthesia only for the ear canal, light sedation to keep her calm. She needs to be able to respond during the procedure. The next 20 minutes move like drowning. Sarah on the table positioned on her right side, left ear facing up. Patricia starting an IV running fluids checking vitals. Wells scrubbing in her hands shaking as she cleaned them as she pulled on gloves that looked too big for her wasted frame. Marcus gowned and gloved positioned himself where he could see everything. He'd assisted in field surgeries before held retractors while doctors worked on soldiers with their guts hanging out. But this was different. This was Sarah. This was everything that mattered spread out under surgical lights in a warehouse that smelled wrong and felt wrong and was probably going to end in disaster. Cisco stood by the door with his phone. Marcus could see the email draft still open, one button push away from burning Helios Medical, one button away from making Sarah's suffering mean something even if she didn't survive to see it. Wells positioned the surgical microscope, a borrowed piece of equipment that had cost the Iron Skulls $15,000 in favors. She adjusted the focus, her breathing audible through the mask. Sarah, I need you to stay completely still. Any movement, any flinch, and I could damage structures we can't repair. Can you do that? Sarah's eyes found Marcus. He moved to where she could see him, where his face would be the last thing she saw before Wells started cutting. I can do it, Sarah's voice steady. I've been still for 16 years. I can be still for 6 more hours. Wells picked up the first instrument, a tiny hook-shaped tool designed for ear surgery. Her hands shook, steadied, shook again. Patricia moved closer, ready to assist, ready to stabilize if needed. Beginning external canal examination. Wells' voice shifted, became clinical. Became the doctor she'd been before cowardice broke her. I can see the device through the scope. It's deeper than I remembered. The wax buildup is extensive. Sarah, you're going to feel pressure. Tell me if it becomes pain. The first touch of instrument to ear canal. Sarah's body went rigid. Marcus saw her hands clench, saw her jaw tighten. But she didn't move, didn't flinch, just breathed through whatever sensation she was feeling. Removing surface wax, creating access pathway. Wells worked with painful slowness, each movement deliberate. The canal is narrower than normal. Years of inflammation. The device has essentially become part of her anatomy. Marcus watched the monitor showing the microscope's view, saw the dark mass of the device wrapped in layers of hardened wax and tissue, saw how close it sat to structures that looked impossibly delicate. One slip, one wrong angle, one moment of Wells's hands betraying her. I'm at the device, beginning excavation of surrounding tissue. Wells switched instruments, picked up something that looked like a miniature scalpel. This is where it gets dangerous. The device has eroded through the canal wall in places. It's touching bone, touching membrane. Sarah made a sound small and sharp. Her hands unclenched, reclenched. Patricia checked her vitals, nodded to Wells. Heart rate elevated but manageable. Blood pressure stable. Pain present but tolerable. Marcus leaned closer. You okay? Sarah's eyes met his. She nodded once. Couldn't speak because speaking meant moving, but her eyes said everything. Said keep going, said don't stop, said I can handle this. Wells cut into tissue, separating device from canal wall. Blood welled up, obscuring the microscope view. Patricia suctioned, clearing the field. More blood, more suction. The monitor showed red washing over everything. Bleeding more than expected. The tissue is friable, infected. Years of low-grade infection have weakened everything. Wells' voice tighter now. I need to work faster than I wanted. Need to get the device out before the bleeding obscures everything completely. How much faster? Risky faster. The kind of faster that increases the chance of nerve damage. Wells didn't look away from the microscope. But if the bleeding doesn't stop, we'll have to abort, and Sarah lives with this for the rest of her life because we can't try again. Marcus looked at Sarah. Her eyes were wet but focused. She gave the smallest nod. Permission, trust, the kind of faith that would destroy him if this went wrong. Do it. Fast and careful, but do it. Wells' hands moved quicker. The microscopic instruments working at speeds that seemed impossible for someone dying of cancer. Marcus saw her training taking over, saw muscle memory from 30 years of surgery overriding the weakness in her body. She cut and suctioned, and excavated, peeling back layers of tissue that had grown around the device like a body trying to wall off an invader. I can see the pump mechanism, see the reservoir. It's empty, ran out of medication years ago, which means Sarah has been living with an inert piece of plastic and metal pressed against her eardrum for God knows how long. Wells' voice carried disgust. This should have been removed after 72 hours. 72 hours. Instead, it's been 16 years. Sarah's body started to shake. Not movement, just tremors running through her, adrenaline and pain and endurance hitting their limits. Patricia increased pain medication through the IV. Marcus moved closer, put his hand where Sarah could see it, where she could know he was there. Almost done, baby. Almost through. Device is mobile. I can manipulate it, but it's adhered to the tympanic membrane. If I pull wrong, if I use too much force, the membrane ruptures, and that's permanent conductive hearing loss, even if the nerve is intact. Wells switched instruments again, something that looked like miniature forceps. This is the moment. This is where I succeed or fail. The warehouse went silent except for breathing. Marcus, Sarah, Wells, Patricia. Cisco by the door with his finger hovering over the email button. Everyone holding the moment like it was made of glass. Wells gripped the device through the microscope. Applied pressure. The monitor showed metal and plastic shifting tissue, tearing blood flowing. Sarah's back arched, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Marcus almost stopped it. Almost called abort. Almost pulled Sarah off that table. But Wells kept going. Kept pulling. Kept working with a steadiness her cancer-wrecked body shouldn't possess. The device moved, millimeter by millimeter, separating from bone and membrane and canal wall. It's coming. It's actually coming. Wells' voice shook with something like wonder. Sarah, I need you to stay still just 30 more seconds. 30 seconds and this is over. Sarah's hands found the edge of the table, gripped hard enough that her knuckles went white. Tears streamed down her face, disappearing into the sterile drapes. But she held still. Held perfectly, impossibly still. Wells pulled. The device came free. Small and ugly and covered in blood and tissue, looking nothing like the medical miracle it was supposed to be. Looking exactly like the mistake it had always been. Wells held it up to the light, this thing that had lived inside Sarah's head for 16 years. This thing that had stolen sound and given pain. It's out. Dear God, it's out. Patricia suctioned the surgical field. Wells examined the canal through the microscope, looking for damage, looking for complications that would mean they'd traded one problem for another. Marcus watched the monitor, saw raw tissue and exposed bone and structures that looked too fragile to have survived. The tympanic membrane is intact, bruised, perforated in one small area, but that should heal. The ossicles are mobile. Nothing's broken, nothing's severed. This shouldn't be possible, but it is. Will she hear? Marcus heard his own voice crack on the question. I don't know. The nerve damage from 16 years of pressure, from the infection, from the medication the device was dispensing before it ran dry. There's no way to predict. Wells began irrigating the canal, flushing out debris and blood and infection. But the structures are there, the pathway is there. If her brain can relearn how to process sound, if the nerve can heal, if the inflammation resolves, then yes, she might hear. Sarah's hand found Marcus, squeezed. Her lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear herself say. Did it work? Marcus looked at Wells. Wells looked at Patricia. Patricia checked the monitors, checked Sarah's vitals, checked everything medical science could check. Then she met Marcus's eyes and shrugged. There's only one way to find out. Wells stepped back from the table, instruments still in her hands, swaying slightly, like the surgery had drained the last reserve she had. Patricia moved in, began closing the surgical site, packing the ear canal with medicated gauze, wrapping Sarah's head in clean dressings. The nerve needs time. Could be hours. Could be days. The swelling has to resolve. The brain has to relearn how to interpret signals it hasn't received in 16 years. Wells pulled off her gloves with shaking hands. But Mr. Martinez, I need you to understand. Even if she hears, it won't be normal. Won't be perfect. The damage is too extensive. She might get 40% hearing. 50 if we're lucky. It will be distorted, muffled. Nothing like what she should have had. It's more than she has now. Yes. Wells sank into a chair someone had brought. Yes, it's more than she has now. Sarah was sitting up slowly, Patricia supporting her. Her left side of her head was wrapped in white bandages, her face pale, her eyes unfocused from pain medication. But she was alive, was whole, was through the worst of it. Marcus moved to her side, helped Patricia settle her. Sarah's hand found his face, touched his jaw, his cheek making sure he was real. Is it over? Her voice slurred slightly from the drugs. It's over. You did it. You were so brave. Sarah laughed, the sound thin and brittle. Brave is your word for terrified and pretending not to be. Her eyes found Wells across the room. Did you get it, all of it? Wells held up a small specimen container. Inside, floating in preservative solution, was the device. Tiny and evil and finally removed from where it should never have been. All of it, every piece. You're free. Sarah stared at the container. Marcus watched emotions chase across her face. Relief, rage, grief for everything that device represented. Then something harder, colder. Good. Now we have physical evidence, not just documents. Actual hardware from their trial. With serial numbers they can't deny. Sarah's eyes cleared, focused. Patricia, you were there. You saw them implant this. You saw my mother die. Will you testify? Patricia's face crumpled. She'd been holding herself together through the surgery, but now tears came fast and hard. I've been running for 16 years, hiding, trying to forget. But yes, I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Cisco stepped forward from his position by the door. We've got 5 other nurses from that night tracked down. 2 of them are ready to talk. The other 3 are scared, but if Patricia goes first, if she shows them it's safe, they'll follow. The anesthesiologist. Marcus looked at Wells. The one who died in Montana. You said he was sober. He was. He'd been in AA for 6 years. Called me 2 weeks before his death, said he couldn't live with what we'd done. Said he was going to the medical board. Wells' voice flat. I told him not to. Told him it would destroy all of us. Told him to think about his family. A week later, his car goes off a mountain road at 2 a.m. with enough alcohol in his system to kill him before the impact did. Helios Medical killed him. I can't prove that, but yes, I believe they did. Wells met Marcus' eyes. And if they know you're coming for them, if they know you have evidence, they'll kill again. They have too much invested. FDA approval is 3 months away. Nexbraxin is projected to be a $20 billion drug. They're not going to let one dead woman and one deaf girl stop that. Sarah's hand tightened on Marcus' arm. Then we move fast. Release everything before they know we have it. Coordinate with the FBI so they can seize assets before Helios can hide evidence. Make it too big and too public for them to bury. That's not how these things work. Cisco pulled up his phone again that showed more screens. I've been talking to a lawyer, federal prosecutor who specializes in medical fraud. She says we need to be strategic, drop hints to the media, let them start investigating independently. Then when Helios tries to cover up, when they start destroying evidence and intimidating witnesses, that's when we release everything. Catch them in the act of obstruction. Marcus looked around the warehouse at this collection of bikers and broken nurses and a dying doctor. At his daughter wrapped in bandages and high on pain medication, but still thinking 3 moves ahead. At the evidence they'd gathered, and the weapon they'd built, and the corporation they were about to fight. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. We need Sarah recovered enough to do interviews. Need Patricia stable enough to testify. Need the other nurses convinced it's safe. Cisco met his eyes. And we need Wells alive long enough to corroborate the medical details. No offense, Doc, but you're kind of crucial to proving this whole thing. Wells laughed, the sound hollow. I'll try not to die inconveniently, but I can't make promises. This thing in my lungs has its own schedule. Sarah struggled to her feet, Patricia trying to stop her, Marcus reaching to steady her. She swayed but held herself upright through pure stubbornness. Then we work fast, 2 weeks. I can heal enough in 2 weeks. She looked at Wells. And you can stay alive for 2 weeks. You owe us that. You owe my mother that. I owe you both much more than 2 weeks, but I'll give you what I can. Wells stood with effort crossed to where Sarah swayed on unsteady legs. Your mother made me promise to save you. I failed that promise for 16 years, but I kept it today. Kept it, finally. And before I die, I'm going to help you destroy the people who killed her. That's the only absolution I get. Sarah stared at the woman who'd shaped her entire existence through negligence. Then slowly, deliberately, she nodded once. Not forgiveness, not even acceptance. Just acknowledgement that Wells was finally doing what she should have done 16 years ago. Marcus helped Sarah to a cot they'd set up. Patricia checked her vitals again, adjusted pain medication, made sure she was stable. Wells collapsed in the chair, her skin gray, her breathing labored. The surgery had cost her something vital. Marcus could see it in the way she held herself, in the tremor that never stopped. Cisco approached, voice low. We got a problem. One of my guys spotted someone watching the warehouse 2 hours ago. Took photos, commercial plates, rental car. Marcus felt ice slide down his spine. Helios, boy, maybe coincidence. But I don't believe in coincidence when we're sitting on evidence that could destroy a $20 billion drug. Did they see Sarah go in? Don't know, but they saw Wells, saw Patricia. Cisco showed photos on his phone. A man in a sedan, professional, alert, the kind of watcher who'd been trained to watch. Called it into someone, stayed for 90 minutes, then left. Marcus looked at Sarah, sleeping now, exhausted from surgery and pain and fighting. Looked at Wells dying, but finally trying to make things right. Looked at the evidence that could save thousands of women or get all of them killed. We move her tonight, soon as she's stable to transport. Move her where Helios has resources. They'll find, not where, who. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolled to a contact he hadn't called in 5 years. I know someone who owes me, someone who has a place that doesn't officially exist on any map. Perez, what are you talking about? Marcus hit dial. The line rang 3 times before a voice answered, rough and suspicious. Martinez, that really you? Hey, Ghost, remember that thing in Kandahar? The one where I didn't report what I saw. A long pause. You calling in that favor after all this time? I need somewhere safe, somewhere off-grid, for my daughter and 2 witnesses in a federal case that's about to explode. Another pause. How bad? Pharmaceutical company, 23 dead women, billion-dollar cover-up, people watching my warehouse right now. Ghost whistled low. You don't do anything small, do you? Okay. I got a place. Montana, middle of nowhere. Hunting cabin that belongs to a friend who doesn't exist. No paper trail. No nothing in. How many people? 5. Maybe 6 if I come. Bring them all. I'll meet you there. Text you coordinates. The line went quiet for a moment. Martinez, this thing you're into, it's the kind that gets people disappeared. Yeah. Good. I was getting bored with retirement anyway. The line went dead. Marcus turned to Cisco. Start packing. Medical equipment, evidence, everything. We move in 2 hours. Where? Montana. Off-grid, protected. Marcus looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully for the first time in maybe years. And we finish this before Helios figures out we're the ones who can destroy them. The next 2 hours moved in controlled chaos. Iron Skulls loading equipment into trucks with blacked-out windows. Patricia organizing medications and supplies. Wells barely conscious in the corner, her breathing wet and rough. And Sarah sleeping through all of it, her body finally getting the rest it had been denied for 16 years. Marcus stood guard at the warehouse door, watching shadows, watching cars that passed too slowly, watching for the moment when Helios decided to move from surveillance to action. His phone buzzed. Text from the federal prosecutor Cisco had contacted. Heard you might have something. Worth my time. Marcus typed back, 23 dead women, active drug trial covering up fatalities. FDA approval in 3 months. Physical evidence. Multiple witnesses. The response came fast. Holy shit. Keep them alive. Keep the evidence secure. I'm opening an investigation tonight. Where are you? Marcus deleted the message without responding. Couldn't trust anyone yet. Couldn't trust that Helios didn't have people inside the federal system. Couldn't trust anything except getting Sarah somewhere safe. Patricia approached, medical bag in hand. She's stable for transport, but Marcus, she needs monitoring. The surgery was traumatic. Infection risk is high. If something goes wrong, then we deal with it. but we deal with it somewhere Helios can't reach us. You really think they'd hurt her? A 16-year-old girl? Marcus looked at Patricia. They killed 23 women, killed a whistleblower, and made it look like drunk driving. You really think one more teenager matters to them? Patricia's face went pale. No, no, I guess not. Cisco appeared with keys. Trucks are loaded. Routes are planned. I'm driving lead. You and Sarah in the middle. Ghost will meet us at the Montana border with fresh vehicles. Whole thing should take 30 hours. Sarah can't sit in a truck for 30 hours. She won't have to. Got a doctor in Wyoming. Another guy who owes favors. He'll check her, make sure she's healing. Then we push the rest of the way. Cisco handed over a burner phone. Only call this number. It's encrypted, routed through 3 countries. Even if Helios intercepts it, they can't trace it. Marcus took the phone. You're not coming. Someone needs to stay here. Make it look normal. Run the club. Keep Helios thinking you're still in Austin. Cisco gripped his shoulder. Brother, you're about to walk into a war. Wars need soldiers back home holding the line. That's me. That's the club. You focus on keeping Sarah safe and burning Helios to the ground. We'll handle everything else. If they come after the club, then they learn why we're called Iron Skulls. We've survived worse than corporate assassins. Cisco smiled, no humor in it. Besides, I got that email ready. Something happens to us, it sends automatically. They touch the club, they expose themselves. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to keep everyone together where he could protect them. But Cisco was right. The club was a target now. Better to split up. Better to make Helios chase multiple leads while Sarah healed and they built their case. He woke Sarah gently. She came alert fast, that combat awareness he'd trained into her from childhood. Her eyes found his face tracked to the activity in the warehouse, understood immediately. We're running. We're relocating, strategically. Marcus helped her sit up, watch for signs of pain or dizziness. How do you feel? Sarah touched the bandages on her head, like someone cut into my skull, but also like something that's been hurting forever finally stopped. Her eyes widened. The pressure, the constant pressure I've had since I can remember, it's gone. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. The device was causing it, pushing on structures. Now that it's out, now I feel like I can breathe for the first time. Sarah stood steady despite the drugs and surgery. Where are we going? Montana, off-grid, somewhere safe while you heal and we prepare to release everything. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3, long enough for you to recover. Long enough to coordinate with federal prosecutors. Long enough to make sure when we hit Helios, we hit them so hard they can't get up. Sarah looked around the warehouse at the assembled bikers and frightened nurses and dying doctor. This is really happening. We're really doing this. Unless you want to stop, unless you want to take the device, take the evidence, and disappear. Start over somewhere they'll never find us. Marcus offered it because he had to, because Sarah deserved a choice. We can run, we can hide, we can let someone else fight this fight. Sarah's face hardened. Mom didn't get to run, the 22 other women didn't get to hide, and the thousands of women who'll die if next Braxton gets approved don't get a choice. She gripped his arm. We finish this, for all of them. Okay. Marcus pulled her into a hug, careful of her bandages, careful of her healing ear. Then we finish this. They loaded into trucks as midnight came. Sarah in the middle vehicle with Patricia medical equipment within reach. Wells in the rear truck, barely conscious, a medic from the club monitoring her vitals. Marcus rode shotgun in the lead vehicle, watching mirrors, watching shadows, watching for a pursuit that would force them to fight before they were ready. The drive out of Austin felt like escaping enemy territory. Every car that followed too long. Every vehicle that matched their speed. Every shadow that moved wrong. Marcus's hand stayed near his .45, ready for the moment when Helios decided surveillance wasn't enough. But they made it to the city limits. Made it to the highway. Made it to open road where distance became their friend and darkness their ally. Cisco's voice came through the encrypted radio. You're clear. No pursuit visible. I'll maintain watch from here. Stay safe, brother. You too, Prez. And Marcus, make them pay. For Maria, for Sarah, for all of them. Marcus keyed off the radio, looked at the dark highway stretching toward Montana and safety, and the 2 weeks they'd need to prepare for war. Behind them, Austin disappeared into darkness. Ahead, somewhere in the mountains, was a place where Sarah could heal and Wells could confess, and they could build the weapon that would destroy Helios Medical. Sarah's voice came through the radio from the truck behind. Weak but determined. Dad, yeah, baby. When we get where we're going, when I'm healed enough, I want to hear something. Hear what? A pause, then your voice. Really hear it. Not just read your lips or feel vibrations. Actually hear what you sound like when you tell me you love you. Marcus felt his throat close, felt 16 years of grief and hope and desperate prayer crystallize into this moment. His daughter asking for something that might be impossible, something that might never happen, something that would break them both if the surgery failed and silence remained forever. But she was asking, which meant she believed, which meant despite everything, despite the pain and the loss and the 16 years of suffering, she still had hope. Then that's the first thing we'll do, soon as you can hear. First thing I'll say. The convoy drove through darkness towards safety and healing and justice. And Marcus held on to that promise, held on to the possibility that his daughter might finally hear the words he'd been saying every day for 16 years. I love you. You're everything. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, but I'm going to make this right, or die trying. The cabin sat in a valley that maps forgot, surrounded by pine trees so thick they blocked satellite surveillance and cell towers alike. Marcus watched dawn break over mountains that had no official names, thinking about how easy it was to disappear in America if you knew the right people. Ghost had kept his word. The place was invisible. Sarah slept in the back bedroom, her breathing steady for the first time since the surgery 3 days ago. Patricia checked on her every 2 hours, monitoring for infection, for complications, for any sign that Wells' shaking hands had done permanent damage. So far, nothing. Just healing. Just the slow process of a body repairing what should never have been broken. Wells was dying faster now. The surgery had accelerated something in her cancer, like her body had been holding on just long enough to make things right, and now felt permission to let go. She spent most hours unconscious, waking only to cough blood into tissues that Ghost burned in the fireplace. No evidence, no traces. Everything that happened in this cabin would disappear like it never existed. Marcus's phone buzzed, the encrypted one. Text from Cisco. Helios sent people to the warehouse. 4 of them. Professional. Asked questions about you, about Sarah, about a doctor. Told them nothing. They left, but they're still watching. Marcus typed back, how long until they connect dots? Response came fast, already have. Got word from my lawyer contact. Helios filed emergency motion to suppress evidence in a case that doesn't officially exist yet. They know we have something, just don't know what or where. Marcus stared at the message. Helios moving before the investigation even started meant they had people inside the federal system. Meant they knew the prosecutor was opening inquiries. Meant nowhere was actually safe if they decided to act. He walked outside where Ghost was cleaning weapons on the porch. Former Delta, 20 years of wet works here the government would never acknowledge. He'd retired to Montana to hunt elk and forget the things he'd done in places that didn't officially exist. Now he was back in the life because Marcus had saved his career in Kandahar by not reporting what really happened during a particular operation. We got a timeline problem. Marcus showed him the message. Ghost read it, his scarred face expressionless. How fast can Sarah recover? Patricia says minimum 10 days before she's stable enough for travel and interviews. Infection risk is too high before then. Helios won't wait 10 days. They'll find this place or they'll force you out. Ghost set down the rifle he'd been cleaning. Question is whether they want to silence you or silence the evidence. What's the difference? Silencing you means sending professionals. Quick, clean, make it look like an accident. Silencing the evidence means lawyers and injunctions and making you so radioactive no prosecutor will touch you. Ghost pulled out a tablet, showed news feeds. They're already starting. Look. Marcus read the headlines Ghost had flagged. Small stories planted in local Austin papers. Biker gang under investigation for medical fraud. Iron Skull's MC accused of threatening hospital staff. Marcus Martinez, club president, wanted for questioning and harassment case. They're poisoning the well, making us look like criminals before we can expose them. Smart play. By the time you release the evidence, public opinion will assume you're lying. Assume you fabricated everything to attack a legitimate pharmaceutical company. Go scroll through more articles. They've got PR firms, legal teams, media contacts. They're fighting a war you don't even know you're in yet. Marcus felt rage building cold and controlled. This was how corporations killed people. Not with bullets, but with lawyers. Not with violence, but with reputation destruction. Make the witnesses look unreliable. Make the evidence seem fabricated. Bury the truth under enough legal challenges that nobody could find it anymore. Then we hit them first. Release everything now, before they can build their defense. You do that, Sarah doesn't get her moment. Doesn't get to testify. Doesn't get to look them in the eye and make them answer for what they did. Ghost met his eyes. And more importantly, you release now before Sarah can hear. She never gets to experience sound. Never gets to know if the surgery worked. You willing to make that choice for her? Marcus wasn't. Couldn't. Sarah had asked for one thing. To hear his voice. To know what love sounded like when it wasn't just vibrations and lip reading. He couldn't take that from her, just because Helios was moving faster than expected. The cabin door opened. Patricia stepped out, her face tight with concern. Marcus, you need to see this. He followed her inside to Sarah's room. His daughter was awake, sitting up, touching the bandages on her head with careful fingers. But her face held an expression Marcus had never seen before. Confusion mixed with wonder, mixed with something close to fear. Dad, her voice uncertain. Something's happening. What kind of something? Sarah's hands moved, trying to describe something she had no words for. There's noise inside my head, not thoughts, not pain, something else, like static. Like when a radio isn't tuned right, it won't stop. Patricia moved closer, checking Sarah's pupils, her balance, her responses. The nerve is waking up. Your brain is starting to receive signals again after 16 years, but it doesn't know how to process them yet. Doesn't remember what sound is supposed to be. Is it working? Is she hearing? Marcus heard the desperation in his own voice. Maybe. Or maybe her brain is just misfiring, trying to make sense of nerve impulses it hasn't received since she was a baby. Patricia looked at Wells, unconscious in the corner chair. We need her awake. Need her to tell us if this is normal. Ghost shook Wells gently. She came to slowly, her eyes unfocused, her breathing shallow. When she saw them all staring, saw Sarah touching her bandages, something cleared in her expression. The static. You're hearing static. Sarah nodded. That's good. That's your auditory nerve reconnecting with your brain. It's been compressed for 16 years. Now it's free, it's sending signals. But your brain doesn't know what to do with them yet. Wells struggled to sit straighter. Over the next few days, maybe weeks, the static will start to resolve. Will start to become actual sound. Muffled at first, distorted. But sound. How long? Sarah's hands shook as she signed. No way to know. Every brain is different. Every nerve heals at its own pace. Wells coughed, wet and painful. But Sarah, you need to understand, even if you hear it won't be normal hearing. The damage was too extensive. You'll get maybe 40%, maybe less. You'll need hearing aids, therapy, years of retraining your brain. I don't care about normal, Sarah's voice fierce. I just want to hear something, anything. I want to know what my father sounds like, what music sounds like, what rain sounds like. She looked at Marcus. Even if it's only 40%, that's 40% more than I've had. Marcus sat beside her, took her hand. Then we give you time. We stay here, we let you heal, and we wait until you can hear well enough to testify. We don't have time. Sarah pulled out her own phone, showed him news alerts she'd been tracking. Helios is moving. They're not just poisoning our reputation. They're accelerating FDA approval. Look, emergency fast-track authorization. They're claiming Nexpraxin is needed urgently for maternal mortality crisis. They could have approval in 6 weeks instead of 3 months. Ghost leaned in, read the articles. That's not coincidence. They know you're coming. They're trying to get approval before you can stop them. Once it's approved, once it's on the market, even if you expose the deaths, they'll argue the benefits outweigh the risks. They'll settle lawsuits, pay off families, but the drug stays approved. So we stop them before approval. Marcus looked at Wells. What do we need? What evidence makes their approval impossible? Wells struggled to focus through pain and exhaustion. The real trial data, the data showing 20% mortality rate, the evidence they falsified results, the proof they knew the drug was killing people and hid it. She gestured weakly toward the boxes they'd brought from Austin. It's all in there, but you need someone to authenticate it, someone who can testify that the documents are real, that I didn't fabricate them. Patricia can testify she was there. Patricia was a nurse. She can testify to what she saw, but she can't authenticate medical research data, can't prove the statistical analysis is accurate, can't counter their experts who will claim we made everything up. Wells' breathing grew more labored. You need Dr. Rachel Kim. She was Helios's senior statistician on the Nexpraxin trial. She's the one who first discovered the mortality rate. She's the one they fired when she refused to falsify the data. Marcus felt something click. Where is she? Seattle. Teaching at University of Washington, Biostatistics Department. Wells coughed again, blood flecking her lips. But she's signed an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. If she talks, Helios can destroy her financially, sue her into bankruptcy, make sure she never works in research again. What if we get the NDA thrown out? On what grounds those agreements are ironclad? Ghost spoke up, in his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen corporate warfare before. NDAs can be invalidated if they're covering up criminal activity. If Helios knew people were dying and hid it, that's criminal. That makes the NDA void. You'd need a judge to rule on that. Need time for legal challenges. Need to move faster than the system allows. Marcus stood, started pacing. Ghost, can you get to Seattle, get to Dr. Kim, convince her to talk? I can get to anyone, convincing is harder. Tell her we have physical evidence, the device pulled from Sarah's ear. Tell her we have multiple witnesses ready to testify. Tell her she has a chance to stop Helios before they kill more women. Marcus looked at Sarah. And tell her there's a 16-year-old girl who's been deaf since birth because of that trial, who lived in pain because they were too coward to admit their mistake. Tell her that girl wants to look them in the eye and make them answer for it. Ghost nodded. I'll leave tonight. But Marcus, if I bring Dr. Kim back here, if she agrees to testify, Helios will know exactly where we are. They'll come, and they won't come polite. Let them come. Marcus felt that old combat certainty settling over him. We've got 3 days until Sarah's stable to move. 3 days to get Dr. Kim's testimony on record. 3 days to build a case so solid Helios can't bury it. He looked at everyone in the room. 3 days to finish what they started 16 years ago, when they killed Maria and destroyed Sarah's hearing. Patricia stepped forward. I'll get Sarah ready to testify. Work on her endurance. Make sure she can handle hours of questions without collapsing. Wells managed a weak smile. And I'll stay alive long enough to authenticate every page of evidence, to confirm every death, to make sure my testimony is on record before this cancer finishes me. What about Cisco and the club? Sarah asked. If Helios figures out we're coordinating, they'll go after them first. Marcus pulled out the encrypted phone, sent a message, going dark for 72 hours. If you don't hear from me by then, burn everything. Cisco's response came immediately, Roger that. We'll hold the line. The next 3 days moved like combat time, hours that felt like minutes when you were preparing, and minutes that felt like hours when you were waiting. Ghost left for Seattle that night, driving a truck that had no registration and license plates that changed every 100 miles. Patricia worked with Sarah, slowly removing bandages, checking healing, documenting every sign that hearing might be returning. The static in Sarah's head grew louder. She described it as waves now crashing and receding, sometimes resolving into something that might be actual sound before dissolving back into noise. She couldn't tell if she was hearing voices or imagining them. Couldn't distinguish between memory and sensation. Marcus watched her frustration build, watched her press hands to her ears, trying to force the static to become something comprehensible. Watched her cry when nothing made sense, when the promise of hearing remained just out of reach. On the second night, she found him on the porch keeping watch while Ghost traveled and Helios presumably searched. What if it doesn't work? Her voice small in the darkness. What if I went through all that pain, all that risk, and I still can't hear? Marcus pulled her close, careful of her healing ear. Then you still saved thousands of women, still exposed Helios, still made sure mom's death meant something. That's not enough. No, it's not. Marcus didn't lie to her. Never had. But it's what we have. And sometimes what we have is enough even when it's not what we wanted. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice carried something harder. I've been reading the trial data, reading about the women who died. They all had something in common. What? They were all poor, all from communities without good medical care. All the kind of patients nobody pays attention to when they complain about side effects. Sarah looked up at him. Helios chose them on purpose, chose women whose deaths wouldn't make headlines, whose families wouldn't have resources to sue. They calculated that these lives were worth less than the profit Next Braxton could make. Marcus felt sick. He'd seen that calculation before in military operations where civilian casualties were deemed acceptable losses. Had hated it then. Hated it more now when the casualties were women who just wanted to survive childbirth. That's why we're going to destroy them. Not just stop the drug, destroy the whole company. Make them an example of what happens when you decide some lives don't matter. How they have billions. We have a dying doctor and a deaf girl and some biker club lawyers. We have the truth. And the thing about truth is once it's out, you can't kill it, can't sue it away, can't bury it under legal fees. Marcus squeezed her shoulder. They made a mistake when they left you alive, when they let you grow up asking questions, because you're not the kind of person who accepts easy answers. Sarah laughed bitter. I'm the kind of person who's been angry for 16 years and finally has somewhere to put it. Good. Stay angry. Anger is fuel. Just don't let it burn you up. The third day, Ghost returned with a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in the 48 hours since he'd found her. Dr. Rachel Kim was 40 Korean American with eyes that had seen too much corporate evil. She carried a laptop bag like it was a weapon. I want immunity before I talk. Marcus looked at Ghost. You explained the situation. Explained everything. She wants protection, wants assurance Helios can't destroy her life. We can't give you immunity. We're not prosecutors. Marcus gestured to the cabin full of evidence. But we can give you a chance to expose what Helios did before they kill more women, and we can make sure your testimony is public enough that silencing you would be obvious murder. Dr. Kim stared at him. That's not reassuring. It's honest, which is more than Helios gave you. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened her laptop. I kept everything, every email, every data file, every conversation where they told me to falsify results. I've been sitting on it for 3 years, too scared to do anything. But when your friend showed me the device you pulled from that girl's ear, she trailed off. I helped design the implantation protocol. I wrote the guidelines for how long those devices should stay in place. 72 hours maximum. The fact that one was left in for 16 years that a child suffered because of my work. Sarah appeared in the doorway, Patricia beside her. Dr. Kim saw her and something crumbled in her professional composure. You're Sarah, the girl with the device. Sarah nodded, crossed to where Dr. Kim sat. You didn't leave it in me. They did. You tried to stop them, and they silenced you. But you can help stop them now. Help me make sure no other kid grows up like I did. Dr. Kim wiped her eyes. Okay, I'll testify. I'll give you everything. But we do this right. We do this in a way they can't dismiss as fabrication or revenge. We do this scientifically, methodically, irrefutably. The next 6 hours were testimony and documentation. Dr. Kim walked through the trial data explaining how Helios had cherry-picked results, how they'd excluded deaths that occurred more than 24 hours after delivery, how they'd manipulated statistics to hide the mortality rate. Patricia confirmed what she'd seen in the delivery room. Wells, barely conscious, authenticated documents and provided medical context. And Sarah sat through all of it, recording everything on the encrypted laptop Ghost had brought her. Face growing harder as she learned exactly how little her mother's life had meant to Helios Medical Solutions. Marcus watched his daughter transform from victim to prosecutor asking questions that made Dr. Kim pause, that made Patricia cry, that made Wells close her eyes against the weight of her own guilt. Sarah wasn't just documenting. She was building a case, was learning to weaponize the evidence they'd gathered. When they finished, as sunset painted the mountains golden red, Kim looked at Sarah with something like awe. You're going to destroy them. Not your father, not the lawyers, you. Because you're smart enough to understand the science and angry enough to make sure everyone else understands it too. Sarah touched the bandages, still covering her healing ear. I'm going to make sure every woman in America knows Next Braxton killed my mother, killed 22 others, would kill thousands more if they get approval. And I'm going to make sure Helios executives go to prison for deciding those deaths were acceptable. That's ambitious. That's justice. Dr. Kim smiled, tired but genuine. Then let's make sure the evidence is bulletproof, because they're going to come after us with everything they have. They worked through the night organizing testimony, cross-referencing documents, building a narrative that even corporate lawyers couldn't dismantle. Ghost kept watch outside, his rifle ready, waiting for the moment when Helios decided silence was worth the risk of violence. Dawn of the fourth day brought two things simultaneously. The first was Sarah running from her room, her face transformed by wonder and terror. Dad, I heard something. Not static, actual sound, actual words. Marcus was on his feet instantly. What did you hear? Dr. Kim. She was talking to Patricia. I heard her voice. It's muffled. It's weird. But I heard it. I heard actual words. Sarah's hands shook as she signed and spoke together. It's working. Dad, it's actually working. Patricia rushed to check, examining Sarah's ear-testing responses, documenting everything. The nerve has healed enough to transmit. Your brain is starting to interpret signals. Sarah, this is incredible. Most people with this level of damage never. The second thing that happened was a ghost bursting through the door, rifle in hand. We got company, 3 vehicles, professional drivers, coming up the access road, 5 minutes out. Marcus felt everything snap into focus. Combat mode. Protect Sarah. Protect the witnesses. Protect the evidence. Nothing else mattered. How many? At least 6, maybe more. Armed. Helios, who else? Ghost moved to a window, started setting up firing positions. Question is whether they want to kill us or just scare us. Dr. Kim went pale. I told you they'd come. And I told you we'd be ready. Marcus started issuing orders. Patricia, gets Sarah in the basement. Wells, too. Dr. Kim, grab your laptop and the backup drives. Everything goes down there. If shooting starts, you stay there until it stops. Marcus, I can fight. Sarah's voice desperate. You can survive. That's your job. Stay alive to testify. Marcus gripped her shoulders. Everything we did, everything we risked, it's all so you can stand up in court and make them answer for Maria's death. You can't do that if you're dead. Sarah wanted to argue. Marcus could see it in her face. But she nodded, let Patricia pull her toward the basement stairs. Dr. Kim followed, clutching her laptop like it was her firstborn child. Wells, barely able to walk, leaned on Ghost for support as he helped her down. Then it was just Marcus and Ghost, 2 men who'd seen combat before, facing whatever Helios thought was enough force to silence them. Ghost handed Marcus a rifle. Like old times. But old times we had air support and rules of engagement. Yeah, but old times we also weren't fighting for something that mattered. Ghost chambered around. These corporate fucks think they can kill whoever they want because they have money. Let's teach them different. The vehicle stopped at the end of the access road. 6 men got out, all of them moving with military precision. Professional security contractors, the kind corporations hired when they needed violence that didn't officially happen. They spread out, covering angles, moving toward the cabin with tactical efficiency. Marcus's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A man's voice, smooth and confident. Mr. Martinez, my name is Derek Haynes. I'm head of security for Helios Medical Solutions. I'd like to discuss a resolution to our current situation. Your situation is you killed 23 women and we have proof. We have different perspectives on that, but I'm not here to debate medical ethics. I'm here to offer you a solution that benefits everyone. Haynes's voice never changed tone. You have documents, you have witnesses, and you have a daughter who just had experimental surgery. I'm authorized to offer you $10 million, enough to take Sarah anywhere in the world for the best medical care, enough to live comfortably for the rest of your lives. All you have to do is give us the evidence and sign a confidentiality agreement. Marcus looked at Ghost. Ghost shook his head. This was the offer before the threat, the carrot before the stick. Not interested. Mr. Martinez, please understand. Next Braxton will save thousands of lives. The women who died in the trial were tragic, yes, but they were a statistical anomaly. The drug has been refined. It's safe now. FDA approval means maternal mortality drops by 40% nationwide. You're not exposing a scandal. You're killing thousands of future mothers because you want revenge. The words were designed to find doubt, to make Marcus question whether Sarah's suffering justified stopping a drug that could genuinely help. It was a good argument, professionally crafted, the kind of thing that worked on most people. But Marcus had spent 20 years in combat, had made calls about acceptable casualties, had watched good people die because someone decided their lives were worth less than the mission objective. He knew the calculation Haynes was making, knew it intimately. Those weren't statistical anomalies. They were women. They were mothers. They were Maria. Marcus's voice went cold. And you're not getting the evidence. You're not silencing the witnesses. And you're not stopping Sarah from testifying about what your company did to her. A long pause. That's unfortunate, because I was hoping we could resolve this peacefully. Then leave, turn around, drive away, let the legal system handle it. We both know that's not going to happen. Haynes sighed like he was disappointed. Mr. Martinez, my team has orders. If you don't hand over the evidence, they will enter that cabin and retrieve it. They will use whatever force is necessary. And if anyone is injured or killed in the process, well, the official story will be that you attacked them, that you were an unstable biker with a history of violence who opened fire on security personnel performing a lawful seizure of stolen corporate property. There's 2 former Special Forces operators in this cabin with enough ammunition to fight for days. You want to bet your people against ours. I'm betting Helios Medical's legal department in unlimited resources against a motorcycle club and a dying doctor. Those are odds I like. Another pause. You have 5 minutes to send out the evidence. After that, we come in. The line went dead. Ghost finished setting up his position. They'll breach the front and back simultaneously. Flashbang, smoke, overwhelming force. They'll try to secure the witnesses first, kill us second. Standard hostage rescue tactics, except we're the hostages and they're the terrorists. Marcus moved to the window gauge distances and angles. The cabin had good sight lines but limited cover. 6 contractors with professional training versus 2 older men with combat experience. Math said the contractors won, but math didn't account for motivation. We don't need to win, just need to hold until... His phone rang, different number. Marcus answered. Mr. Martinez, this is FBI Special Agent Jennifer Dawson. I'm 3 minutes from your location with 12 agents. Hold your position, do not engage. We've been monitoring Helios communications and we have warrants for their security personnel. Marcus felt something unclench in his chest. How did you... Your friend Cisco sent us everything 2 hours ago. We've been watching Helios scramble. When their security team moved toward Montana, we knew where you were. Dawson's voice was crisp, professional. Keep your people safe for 3 more minutes. We'll handle the rest. The line clicked off. Marcus looked at Ghost. FBI's coming. Before or after those contractors kill us? During, if we're lucky. The contractors were moving now, spreading into assault positions. Marcus saw the team leader checking his watch, counting down the 5-minute warning. Saw the moment when the order came to breach. Then he saw something else. Black SUVs or roaring up the access road, red and blue lights hidden behind grills flashing on. FBI. Coming in fast. Coming in hard. The contractors saw them too. Saw their operation falling apart. The team leader shouted something, started waving his people back toward their vehicles. But the FBI was already there, blocking the road agents deploying with rifles and authority. Marcus watched through the scope as Derek Haynes got out of one vehicle with his hands up. Watched FBI agents swarm the contractors, securing weapons, reading rights, executing warrants. Watch 16 years of cover-up and corporate murder and calculated evil finally meet consequence. Sarah emerged from the basement, Patricia and Dr. Kim behind her. Wells stayed below, too weak to climb stairs. Sarah crossed to the window, saw the FBI taking Helios personnel into custody. Is it over? Marcus pulled her close. The shooting part, but now comes the hard part. Now you have to testify, have to look them in the eye and make them answer for what they did. I can do that. Sarah touched her bandages. Then slowly, deliberately, she reached up and started unwrapping them. Patricia tried to stop her, but Sarah shook her head. I want them to see. When I testify, when I stand in front of judges and juries and cameras, I want everyone to see exactly what Helios Medical did to me. The bandages came off, revealing scarred tissue and healing wounds, and the ear that had held a device for 16 years. Sarah stood there vulnerable and fierce, a warrior without armor who didn't need it anymore. Agent Dawson entered the cabin, federal authority radiating from every gesture. She looked at Marcus, at Sarah, at the evidence spread across tables, and the witnesses who'd spent 3 days building an unbreakable case. We're going to need statements from everyone. We're going to need testimony, and we're going to need you to trust that we'll handle this right. Dawson met Sarah's eyes. But first I need to know, are you okay? Do you need medical attention? Sarah straightened, held herself like the 16-year-old who'd survived surgery and pain in the truth of her mother's murder. I'm fine. I can hear, not perfectly, but I can hear, and I'm ready to make sure everyone knows what Helios Medical Solutions did to my family. Dawson nodded slowly. Then let's get started, because we're going to destroy them. Completely. And you're going to help us do it. Outside, dawn light painted the mountains gold. Marcus stood on the porch watching FBI agents process evidence, arrest contractors, begin the machinery of justice. Cisco's voice came through the encrypted phone. Saw the news. FBI raid on pharmaceutical company. You good? We're good. Sarah can hear. Wells is alive. We got them, brother. We actually got them. Good. Long pause. Maria would be proud of both of you. Marcus felt his throat close. 16 years of grief and guilt and desperate searching condensing into this moment. Maria would be proud. Proud that Sarah survived. Proud that they'd fought. Proud that 23 deaths would finally mean something. Yeah, she would. Inside the cabin, Sarah sat with Agent Dawson, beginning the testimony that would end Helios Medical. Her voice was stronger now, clearer, carrying the weight of 16 years lived in silence and pain. And for the first time since she was born, Marcus heard his daughter speak words she could actually hear herself say. My name is Sarah Martinez. My mother was Maria Martinez. And this is what Helios Medical Solutions did to us. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Helios Medical's emergency motions to suppress evidence were denied. Their lawyers' attempts to discredit witnesses collapsed under the weight of documentation. Director Kim's testimony, backed by years of internal emails and falsified data, proved criminal fraud. Patricia Owens and the other nurses provided eyewitness accounts that corroborated every detail of the cover-up. And Sarah became the face of everything Helios had destroyed in pursuit of profit. 2 weeks after the FBI raid, Marcus stood in their Austin living room watching his daughter on national television. She sat across from a network journalist, her scarred ear visible to millions of viewers, speaking with the clarity of someone who'd finally found her voice. My mother didn't know she was part of an experiment. She didn't consent to being a test subject. She trusted her doctors to keep her safe. Instead, they gave her a drug that killed her and left me deaf for 16 years. Sarah's hands moved as she spoke, signing for emphasis. And Helios Medical knew. They knew women were dying. They knew the drug was dangerous. But they hid the data because profits mattered more than lives. The journalist leaned forward. You underwent surgery to remove the device. How is your hearing now? About 50% in my left ear. It's distorted, muffled. I'll need hearing aids for the rest of my life. Sarah touched her ear, the gesture unconscious. But I can hear my father's voice. I can hear music. I can hear rain. That's more than I had. But it's not what I should have had if Helios Medical had done the right thing 16 years ago. What do you want people to know? Sarah looked directly into the camera. I want people to know that 23 women died in that trial. 23 mothers who trusted the medical system to protect them. Helios Medical calculated that their deaths were acceptable losses, calculated that hiding the truth was worth more than saving lives. Her voice hardened. And I want people to know that we're not going to let them get away with it. Every woman who takes Nexpraxin, if it gets approved, needs to know what it cost. Needs to know that the company lied about safety data. Needs to know that choosing profit over people has consequences. Marcus turned off the television as the interview ended. Sarah was still at the studio doing additional interviews for other networks. The FBI had encouraged maximum publicity, knowing that public pressure would prevent Helios from burying the case in legal challenges. His phone rang. Wells' hospice nurse. "Mr. Martinez, I thought you should know. Dr. Wells passed away an hour ago." She was watching Sarah's interview. Her last words were, "I'm sorry. I thought you'd want to know." Marcus thanked her, ended the call. Stood in the quiet of his living room thinking about Catherine Wells. About a woman who'd made terrible choices and spent her last months trying to make them right. About redemption that came too late but came nonetheless. He'd never forgiven her. Probably never would. But she'd done what she promised. Fixed what she broke. Gave Sarah a chance at hearing. Testified against Helios even though it destroyed what was left of her reputation. That had to count for something. Sarah came home late, exhausted from hours of interviews. Marcus had dinner waiting. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind they had perfected over 16 years when words were harder to exchange. "Wells died today." Marcus said it flat, letting Sarah process. She set down her fork. "Did she suffer?" "I don't know. The nurse said she was watching your interview. Said her last words were an apology." Sarah was quiet for a long time. "Good. She should have been sorry. Should have been sorry 16 years ago." She looked at Marcus. "But she tried at the end. That's more than most people do." "It is." They finished dinner, cleaned up together. Sarah disappeared into her room to work on the graphic novel she'd been drawing, a visual narrative of their story that her publisher said would be a bestseller. Marcus sat in his garage, the space that had started everything, thinking about the journey from those first altered medical records to Sarah's voice on national television. His phone buzzed. Text from Cisco. "You see the news, Helios stock dropped 60%. CEO resigned. FDA suspended Nexpraxin approval pending investigation." "We did it, brother," Marcus typed back. "Sarah did it. We just helped." Response: "She's Maria's daughter. Of course she did." 3 months later, Marcus stood in a federal courthouse watching Sarah take the stand in the criminal trial of Helios Medical Solutions executives. She wore a business suit, her scarred ear visible, a small hearing aid tucked behind it. She looked older than 16. Looked like someone who'd earned the right to demand justice. The prosecutor led her through testimony. The device, the surgery, the 16 years of pain, the mother she'd never really known. Sarah spoke clearly, signing occasionally for emphasis, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom. When she finished, the defense attorney stood for cross-examination. He was expensive, polished, the kind of lawyer corporations hired to destroy witnesses. "Martinez, isn't it true that you've profited considerably from this tragedy? Book deals, television appearances, a graphic novel." Sarah met his eyes. "I've profited exactly $0. Every penny goes to Silent No More, the foundation my father started to protect medical whistleblowers. But even if I had kept the money, you think any amount could replace 16 years of hearing, could replace my mother? Isn't it true that your hearing loss could have been congenital, that the device might have been unrelated to?" The device had a Helios medical serial number. It matched the protocol Dr. Kim designed for the Nexpraxin trial. "It was inside my ear canal for 16 years because your clients forgot to remove it." Sarah's voice went cold. "You're not questioning my testimony. You're trying to rewrite history, but there are 23 dead women who can't be rewritten, and I'm not going to let you erase them." The attorney tried several more approaches. Each one collapsed under Sarah's combination of facts and controlled rage. By the time cross-examination ended, even the jury looked disgusted with the defense strategy. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The verdict came back in 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, manslaughter, obstruction of justice, falsifying research data. 34 Helios executives and researchers were arrested. The company filed for bankruptcy within a month. Nexpraxin was permanently banned from FDA consideration, and the settlement fund established for victims and their families reached $2.3 billion. But the number Marcus cared about most was different: 19. 19 other children who'd been part of the trial who'd had devices implanted and forgotten. 19 kids who got surgery, got treatment, got their lives back because Sarah had fought for answers. 1 year after the trial, Marcus stood in a packed auditorium in Austin. Sarah was on a stage, accepting an award from a medical ethics organization. She'd graduated high school early, was starting college in the fall to study biostatistics and medical law, was planning a career built on making sure what happened to her never happened again. When she finished her acceptance speech, she looked directly at Marcus in the front row. "I want to thank my father, who spent 16 years searching for answers when everyone told him to stop looking, who taught me that some silences need to be broken, who showed me that fighting for justice isn't about revenge, it's about protecting the next person who might suffer." She paused, the auditorium silent. "Dad, come up here." Marcus shook his head. This was her moment, her victory. But Sarah was already waving him up, and the crowd was applauding, and he found himself climbing stairs to join his daughter on stage. Sarah handed the microphone to someone else, turned to face Marcus, put her hands on his shoulders, and for the first time since the surgery spoke words she knew he had been waiting 16 years to hear properly. "I love you, Dad. Thank you for never giving up on me." Her voice was imperfect, carried that slight flatness that came from years of not hearing herself. But it was clear. It was real. It was everything. Marcus pulled her into a hug, felt her shake with emotion. When he spoke, his voice was rough, with 16 years of grief and hope and desperate love finally finding resolution. "I love you too, baby. More than you'll ever know." The audience was crying. Marcus was crying. Sarah was crying, and somewhere Marcus thought Maria was watching her daughter. Their daughter standing in front of thousands of people, scarred but unbroken, using her voice to protect others the way no one had protected her. 3 years after the trial, Marcus stood at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Sarah beside him now, 19 and finishing her sophomore year at Georgetown. She wore a hearing aid, and her left ear had learned to navigate the world with partial hearing the same way she'd learned to navigate it with none. They'd come to honor the names on the wall, the Marines Marcus had served with, the brothers he'd lost, the men who'd taught him that some fights were worth dying for. Sarah placed flowers at the base of the memorial. "You know what I learned from all this? What? That Mom's death wasn't meaningless. That my 16 years of silence wasn't wasted time. It taught me how to fight, how to observe, how to turn pain into purpose." She looked at him. "You spent 20 years learning how to fight in the Corps, but you taught me what's worth fighting for. Not revenge, not even justice. Making sure the next kid doesn't suffer like I did." Marcus put his arm around his daughter. "They say corpsmen never leave a man behind. I carried you for 16 years through every doctor, every procedure, every failure. And when I finally found the answer, it wasn't on a battlefield. It was in choosing to trust someone who hurt us to try to make it right. That's not weakness. That's the hardest fight there is. And we won." "Yeah." Marcus looked at the names on the wall, at the brothers who'd taught him about sacrifice and duty and the cost of protecting others. "Yeah, we did." They walked away from the memorial together. Behind them, inscribed in granite, were the names of men who'd given everything for a cause. Ahead of them was a world that Sarah was helping make safer, one whistleblower protection at a time, one reformed drug approval process at a time, one life saved from corporate indifference at a time. Maria would have been proud. Marcus was proud. And Sarah, scarred, partially deaf but unbreakable, was finally truly free. 5 years after the trial, the medical scandal Marcus and Sarah uncovered led to 34 arrests and permanent criminal records for every Helios Medical Solutions executive involved. The $2.3 billion settlement fund provided compensation to 23 families who'd lost mothers and 19 children who'd suffered complications from improperly managed medical devices. Silent No More became the nation's leading whistleblower protection network for medical professionals. In its first 5 years, the organization protected 127 individuals who came forward about corporate misconduct, leading to 8 additional pharmaceutical investigations and preventing an estimated 50,000 adverse medical events. Sarah Martinez graduated summa cum laude from Georgetown University with a double major in biostatistics and medical law. She now works as a consultant to the FDA, redesigning drug trial protocols to prevent the kind of abuse that killed her mother. Her graphic novel, The Silence We Keep, won a National Book Award, and has been translated into 32 languages. Marcus Reaper Martinez still rides with the Iron Skulls Motorcycle Club, but every year on Maria's birthday, he visits families affected by medical malpractice, not with revenge, but with resources to fight back. He's helped 89 families navigate the legal system, testified as an expert witness in 12 trials, and never stopped believing that some silences need to be broken. Sarah's hearing stabilized at 55% in her left ear. She wears hearing aids and has learned to appreciate sound in a way that people who've always heard never will. She says every raindrop is a miracle. Every voice is a gift. Every moment of sound is a reminder that some things are worth fighting for. On the 16th anniversary of Maria's death, Sarah performed a song she wrote called "The Woman Who Heard My Silence." Marcus sat in the front row of a packed auditorium surrounded by Iron Skulls members who cried openly as they listened to the girl whose life had been changed by one waitress who paid attention, one doctor who finally made things right, and one father who never stopped searching for answers. Because sometimes miracles don't need special equipment or prestigious degrees. Sometimes they just need someone willing to watch, to trust their instincts, and to speak up. Sometimes they need someone like Marcus, a corpsman, who understood that the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons. Sometimes they need someone like Sarah, who learned that silence can be broken, that justice is worth fighting for, and that some wounds, when they heal, make you stronger than you ever were whole. Maria didn't live to see justice served, but her daughter, deaf, no longer silent, no more, made sure the world remembered her name. And that 23 mothers who died for profit would never be forgotten.